Welcome to episode 101 of the Camerosity Podcast, the world's first and only open source film and digital photography podcast. My name is Mike Eckman, and we are back. After our last episode, the gang took a short hiatus to continue the celebration, but now, 7 weeks later, we are back for more. When it came time to decide what the next episode should be about, we thought long and hard, and apparently there's an appetite to talk about a particular blogger and podcaster, specifically me. I have no idea what kinds of things you all might want to know about me, or if we could even fill a whole 2 hours with it, but we're going to try. Since it has been a while since we've recorded, let's remind everyone who we are. From the Great White North is our resident Canadian, Stephen Strangways. Hey Stephen, is it as cold up there as it has been here in the Midwest?
It's been pretty cold. It's been minus 24 Celsius, but I'm waiting for it to hit minus 40 when it will be the same in Celsius and Fahrenheit and just make it easy for everyone.
Ah, math. From Yellow Springs, Ohio, is a man who doesn't know his ass from his elbow, Paul Rivals. Hey Paul, do we need to get you some books on the human anatomy?
I'd always heard that if you poured beer in your ear, it would give you a special kind of rush. But, all I did was just get wet.
From Gainesville, Florida, is a man who hasn't been slowed down since retirement, Anthony Rue. Hey, Anthony, are you ever going to come visit me?
I will actually be coming to visit you the last week of May, because I'm heading up to Chicago to see a band called the Mekons. Going to go to Calumet Fisheries and then make it down to the region.
And finally, from Sydney, Australia, is the proud owner of a brand new keychain digicam, Theo Panagopoulos. Hey Theo, do you want to share with us the first pics you took with that new camera?
Maybe not the first one, because it was of my wife, who wasn't ready for it and she would kill me. But I will share some early ones.
Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of fellow collector, photographer, and friend of the show, Eric Cass-Lewis. Eric last appeared on the show on episode 41, and he will be missed. Okay, I can see the waiting room is piling up, so let's open the doors and let everyone in. We got a lot of regulars here, so just go through the list real quick. Fernando Villava from Germany. Welcome, Fernando.
Hola, hello.
Ira Cohen, for the first time in a while, is Mark Faulkner. Welcome back, Mark. We have Miles Lieback, Will Pinkham, Pat Casey. AJ is stuck in joining, so maybe he'll be here in a little bit. And Rob Lattimer, hello. Dave Palumbo.
Hey,
guys.
Hey, I even have my Camerosity shirt on this time, too.
I think this is a record. We've got 4 shirts on the one. I should have brought mine today. I should have worn mine today as well.
Yeah. The reality is it just came up at the top of the queue in my drawer, my T-shirt drawer. I don't have a very elaborate system. It's just whatever appears at the top. Maybe that could be the first bit of Mike Eckman trivia, is how does he sort through his T-shirts, is whatever appears at the top of the drawer.
Barbara's always telling me I do that also.
Hey, Ira, you had knee surgery. How you doing?
Hunky-dory.
2 thumbs up. All right. I was talking to Ira recently, and he needed to look something at his cameras, and he told me he's only allowed to go up the stairs once a day, so he had already used up his quota for the day.
Yeah, but that was a long time ago.
So you're better now, right?
I'm training for the next marathon.
All right, it's good to hear. So, Anthony, this was kind of your idea. I won't blame you entirely, but we had been thinking of spitballing some ideas for shows, and Anthony thought that there was an appetite to ask a certain host some very thought-provoking questions. So maybe I'll let you get started if you want.
Well, you've been our fearless leader here now for 101 episodes, but you are also kind of a man of mystery. So I thought this would be a good chance for us to be able to you've got this cool thing going with your website and all of the reviews that you've done, and how it's sort of become a touchstone for anybody interested in vintage cameras to find out more, find out histories. So I just thought it'd be interesting to sort of open the floor up to talk to you about this, crazy little side hustle of yours. I'm sure it's like paid down the mortgage and paid for the subterranean vault that you've now been able to build out, and the champagne fountain that's just off camera.
You are sorely misled. I don't know where you're getting your facts from.
And then there's the sex scandals we need to talk about.
Sex scandals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I had heard that Mike had an OnlyFans site, but I haven't been able to find it yet. So
No, it's only cams.
Only cams. Well, of any of the hosts, Paul's the only one who's ever been to my house before. And when you're in the room where all the cameras is, there's another door. You never asked to see what was behind that door. So maybe next time you're here. Or Anthony and May.
But, kind of just to get a little bit of the backstory, I know that we've touched on it before, but how did you get started in all of this? Because, to me, what's interesting is of those of us who've been sort of working as hosts on Camerosity, you are the total gear nerd who really doesn't really care that much about photography itself. Like whenever I try to talk about museums or photographers, it's not your thing. Your thing is, how cool is this camera? But this camera website of yours is massive now. How did you get started in it? What was the spark that led you to think this is something I want to pour my life into for the next couple of years?
That's a good question. I wish I had an amazing story to tell you about that time that I met Ansel Adams or something when I was little. But honest to God, the answer to that question is something that every one of you is probably going to relate to is one night on eBay.
Our next one night on eBay.
One night on eBay. Yeah, I don't remember what specific. Well, okay, guess I could backtrack a little bit more. I shot film when I was a kid. I was born in 1978. So, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I remember my first camera was a Fisher-Price 110 blue and yellow kids camera. I know I had some random point and shoots in the 90s. I couldn't even tell you what brand they were. But I never really owned anything good. I didn't own a film SLR or anything like that. I sort of got into photography in the very beginning of the digital era. I had a really cheap Toshiba camera. They really didn't make cameras that much. I got a Nikon DSLR, and I think 2006, I upgraded it to a D7000 after that. And I had heard from, as we all know, lens gas is the hardest part of owning any interchangeable lens system. And when you're younger and don't have a big budget for stuff, you're looking for affordable options. And I had heard that you could use old Nikon film camera lenses on digital cameras and they would still work. Obviously, manual focus. But I was on eBay and I happened to be looking for, what I thought would have a lens that would work on I think it was the D7000 at the time. And I ended up finding an EL2, which, as I've learned, is one of their less common models. It was only in production for about a year, but it was a price I was willing to just splurge on. I think, I probably spent $25 on it. I know they go for more than that now, but I bought this camera. I got the lens home. I put it on my digital camera and just started shooting with it. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, I was impressed with the images, but then I wanted to learn actually how to shoot the film camera. So then I put the lens back on the EL2, shot a roll, sent it off to a lab online to get the pictures developed. And I was like, hey, this is actually a lot of fun. So kind of went back on eBay and started looking around. And for some bizarre reason, I went completely in the wrong direction and settled on a number 1A Kodak autographic folding junior or something. And I bought that, not realizing that it used 1/16 film. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. I started looking online, trying to learn as much as I could. There was a blogger who, I think he's still active, Mike Keneally. He used to have a blog where he reviewed old cameras, and he had done that exact model, and he had talked about adapting 120 film to 1/16. And I was like, okay, I could do that. I built an adapter out of washers, etc., and got it working. And I think I somehow got lucky and got the only 19 teens folding Kodak that wasn't completely riddled with pinholes. Somehow it survived. But I got a good roll out of that, and I just thought it might be kind of fun to write about it. And the article still exists. If you go to my site and search for, I think the name of the article is I bought an 85-year-old camera. That's been over 10 years since though, so it's now a 96-year-old camera. I wrote about it, and I thought it was kind of neat. And then one thing led to another. I started stumbling upon, I got an Argus C3, a Fed 2, a Konica Auto S2 were some of my earlier cameras. As you guys all know, these are all pretty rudimentary, not rudimentary, it's the wrong word for it, common cameras that generally have low value. You could still find Argus C3s generally for pretty cheap. The Konica Auto S2 is a great camera, but it's never sold for a lot of money. Fed 2s are incredibly common. But the bug hit me, and I just decided, okay, this is fun. And my wife kind of, rolled her eyes at, the small pile of cameras that started appearing. And I had the blog. I've shared this on before. The reason my site is named after me and doesn't have a fun camera name is that it didn't initially start out for cameras. I mean, I really just wanted to experiment with blogging, and I would do movie reviews, music reviews. I have an article with tips and tricks on how to write a effective resume, what my idea for the next 3 Terminator movies should be about. I mean, it was literally just random crap I was writing about. And I just kept putting out these camera reviews. And I mean, one thing truly led to another. I met some people early on who really supported me. Mark is one person. Of anybody in this room, I think I started talking to you, Mark. It's been almost 10 years, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. Probably 2016, maybe, right?
Yeah.
2015, 2016, yeah.
Because Mark has a site too, so we kind of just hit it off. And first it was just the occasional email, text messaging. I didn't take blogging too seriously. It was just kind of a fun hobby. Started talking to a few other collectors. Mike Novak is someone who I spoke to a lot very early on as well. One day I had some questions about blogging, I needed some technical advice. So I just reached out to a couple other bloggers who had sites back then too. Jim Gray was one. Who else was it? Hamish Gill, I think I reached out to a couple other guys, and we started this private chat. That's where I met Theo. And then I met just a bunch of other people, and it kind of snowballed from there. And I mean, that's truly where it came to today. And I guess it just never stopped.
So I'm curious, of your early days, were there any cameras that were like your white whales that were like I've read about this. This must be the coolest camera in the world, but I'll never find one that I can afford to shoot. And, then I assume, because I know early on people started, really taking to the website. Do you remember the first time that somebody gave you a camera to shoot that was just like, holy crap, I never thought I'd see this in my life?
Yeah. I mean, that describes probably a third of my collection now, to be honest with you. I mean, just even having a Barnack Leica back then just seemed so out of reach for me because, this was truly just a hobby, something that I spent my spare money on. The site generated no revenue. Not that it makes a lot today, but the ad revenue is just barely enough to handle the hosting costs. The story you're probably wanting to hear about would be the day that Kurt Ingham loaned me his X-Pan. He didn't just loan me the X-Pan. He loaned me the X-Pan and all the lenses for it, all the cases. He even sent the center weighted filter that sells for $150, $200 just for the filter by itself. He just sent all this stuff to me, and he packaged it. He double boxed it. So the actual shipping box that it came in was 2 feet wide, 18 inches deep, 18 inches tall. And my wife was like, what the hell is this? And I'm like, I don't know. And I opened it up and I was terrified of it. Not that the X-Pan is a scary camera, but I was very aware of what it was worth. And my wife was like, why is someone sending you this multiple $1,000 camera and all this stuff? And I'm like, he really likes my website. I kind of felt the sense of responsibility to take it seriously. And I mean, there's so many people. I mean, I could sit here for an hour. I mean, everybody on here, even the people who are just listeners. I mean, the fact that we interact through Facebook and, and on Discord, I see William Ponder just jumped in too. All of you guys have in some way contributed, even just with your feedback. Obviously, some more than others. Anthony, you've been a great friend to me too. Paul, of course, has been supportive in so many different ways. But Kurt definitely kicked it up a notch because he already liked what I was doing, and he just started sending me these unobtainium cameras like that. I was loaned from a different collector a Bell & Howell Photon. Dan Hausman sent me an Ectra, and I want to be respectful. I try not to flaunt it too much because I know there's other people who would love to try these cameras as well. I'm not giving away free extras or anything, but that's part of why I like to share with so many people. Anthony, I've sent you stuff for free. I've sent Alyssa stuff. William, I know I sent you something. I just sent a box to a guy on Discord just this past week I'm trying to share with people because I know I've been real lucky and a lot of people put their trust in me. So I took that seriously and I tried to, it makes me feel good if someone trusts me with their camera, and not only do I, shoot it, take pictures of it, but when I write those reviews, I want them to be happy that they did that, see the results of their generosity, and obviously make sure I get it back to them in good condition. I could even tell you a story if you want to hear about a time where I actually damaged a loaned camera, if you'd like to know that too. So
Steven says yes.
yeah, it was the Pentagon 6 TL. It was loaned to me by, I think Roger sent me that camera, and I was very careful with it. I always take care of every camera that I have. Every time someone loans me something, it goes on a different shelf. It's separate. I don't put it anywhere that I think it could be damaged. Well, I had been shooting something and I put it down on the floor away from anything else. It was up against a wall with other cameras on it. And my stupid cat jumped up on the shelf above it and knocked a camera off of the shelf. I think it was an Argus. Brick. Literally landed on the back of the Pentagon 6. And it thankfully didn't damage it too bad, but it kind of it put a gash in the leatherette, the body finish. And there was a tiny, tiny bump there. And I was just horrified. My stomach dropped. I felt horrible. I immediately went on eBay looking, okay, how much is it going to cost for me to replace this guy's camera? The lens was fine. Thankfully, I would only need a body. I just was like, you know what? I got to tell him. And I dreaded typing up the email. And I was like, Roger, I'm so sorry. I want you to know that I do take care of stuff. Unfortunately, I just made a judgment, an error, put the camera in an area where the camera itself didn't fall. Something fell on it and put a dent in the back of the camera. And thankfully, he ended up writing back. He goes, shit happens. I don't like that camera anyway. I was just going to sell it. And I'm like, well, can I send you some money or something to recoup the damage of it? He goes, don't worry about it, Mike. I appreciate what you're doing. Thanks for your honesty. You don't have to send me anything. So it worked out well, but that really made me realize too, the responsibility I have, especially when I have stuff on loan to me. So thankfully it never happened again.
How did you name your eBay store name?
I randomly picked 2 words. It doesn't mean anything. I used to have an eBay account that was my name, and I didn't want that on there. I didn't want people to identify me by my name, and I really just picked 2 words. It just didn't mean anything specific. So unfortunately, there's no cool story behind that.
Well, Mike, I've got a question for you. I'm fairly sure that we met about the same time via Rudy.
Well, the first time we met in person was in Cincinnati at a show, but you and I had been talking online. I think you came on the show.
I did. I think it was episode 4 or something like that. But I think it was via Rudy. I think Rudy probably got us together.
Yeah.
You are second only to me, maybe even ahead of me at this point of the large collections. And you flew out to Los Angeles twice, didn't you, on Rudy's stuff? Was it twice or 3 times?
Twice. Yeah, that was Kurt Ingham's collection.
Yeah, that has to be unique to you. I mean, you haven't done.
Oh, yeah.
There's never been anything that could rival what you did with Rudy and Kurt's stuff. Talk about what you found when you got there.
So, I had already mentioned Kurt earlier. He was a big supporter of my site, and he would just send me camera after camera. Early on, he'd send me one at a time, and when I would send one back, he would then have another one he'd send to me. And then it just got to the point where he was sending them faster. He'd send me 2, 3 at a time. I'm like, Jesus, Kurt, slow down. It takes me months to write these reviews. He's like, no, just take your time. And then I got an email from him in late 2021. He'd said, hey, Mike, I don't know if you know, but I've been really sick. Kurt had cancer twice. He went in remission several years ago, but it came back. And obviously he knew something he wasn't sharing with too many people. He had said the time has come to decide, or at least not leave my wife with the burden of everything that I have. His wife, don't want to say her name. You probably all know it, but just out of respect for her. She is a photographer, wonderful lady, just like him, ex-punk rocker. Kurt was in a Los Angeles punk band in the 70s called Chainsaw. He was a championship marksman. Him and his wife rescued greyhound dogs and had a dog sanctuary in their house. Kurt was a school teacher. His wife shared with me like drawings from school children. They used to call him Mr. Twister because that was his nickname in the band. He was just an amazing person. I mean, I've never met anybody like Kurt, with just all the different things that he was involved in. But she would photograph like rock musicians. Like she showed me a picture of like Alice Cooper that she had photographed in the 70s at some small LA club. She had not little, it was a library of images of stuff like that. So incredibly interesting people. She's a talented photographer, but she doesn't have interest in the old stuff like he did. And he sent me this email and said, Mike, I would like to have you help disseminate this collection. He wanted me to have a lot of it. He goes, we need, make sure my wife is taken care of too. We'll figure out the details later. He goes, it's too much for one person. So I want you to work with someone else that I have in mind. And when I got that email, I was like blown away. I was like, wow, okay. Like I figured he was going to write my name in his will, and like 10 years down the road, I'd probably get a call from some lawyer saying, hey, you need to, figure this stuff out. And I didn't even know who the other person was at that point. So, I shared that with my wife and said, looks like this guy out in Los Angeles has been sending me all these boxes. He's in poor health. I had no idea. I mean, he didn't share with me too many specifics of exactly the health situation he was in. I ended up finding out 6 months later, 7 months later, that it was Rudy. And I was like, oh, okay. Like this is somebody I know, because Rudy and I had crossed paths multiple times too. Rudy's great. He's been on the show. He draws on The Simpsons and Futurama. He's got a bust of Bender from Futurama that's autographed by Matt Groening and some of the other creators of the show. He's done Rugrats movies and stuff. Super talented guy, really cool dude. So I was like, okay, this is great. Like if I'm going to help go through this big collection, it's nice that I know the other person and I'm not going to be butting heads with some random, guy. And I knew he was out in California too, where Kurt was, and I'm, in the Midwest. But unfortunately, his cancer was very aggressive this time around. And it was 5 months later, I got another email from him saying, we need to speed up the timeline. I want you to come this summer. And I was like, oh, I was thinking years down the road, because no one wants to think, their friend's going to die soon. So he had said he's already working with Rudy, because Rudy was, 25 minutes from his house. And I started talking more to Rudy, and Rudy was like, Mike, we need to get rid of a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's going to take us forever if we sell these things one at a time. And he, I think, had already, because Paul, you and Rudy had done another collection separate from this before that, right?
Yeah, Rudy had, in a camera club that he belongs to, there was a gentleman that his father was a collector. Mm-hmm. And Rudy brokered that and shipped it all to me. And so Rudy and I became friends and trusted each other. So
yeah. So he had that experience with you and thought, well, I'll just work with Paul again. So he proposed to me, hey, there's this guy in Ohio named Paul Rivals. No, I'm kidding. Paul Reibold. And I was like, oh, I know Paul, at that point we were already doing the show. I think maybe I have my timelines wrong. Well, I knew you anyway. And I was like, okay, this is even better. Like I know Rudy, the guy I'm supposed to go out to California to help with the collection. And if we're going to sell a bunch of this stuff, and keep in mind, I knew Kurt was a prolific collector, and I imagined like in my mind's eye, this big shelf, maybe a big room filled with cameras. Because that's the same 2021, Mark. That's when I visited you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I traveled out east. I visited Ira. I had visited Mark, and I just pictured in my head this big collection, but I had no idea like how big it was. Truth be told, I don't think Kurt did either. I think he was a lifelong collector, and he had ran out of room and started putting things in storage. And I'm just assuming, because unfortunately he died too fast. I never actually got to meet him in person. So I never had a chance to really talk to him face to face about his collection. But it was, it was quite large. And Rudy didn't know either. So Rudy was invited over to Kurt's house. He saw how much was there. And then when we were told that there's 2 whole storage units, a 5x8 and a 10x20 filled with cameras, he was like, Mike, this is too much. And I shared with my wife, he had recorded a Facebook video that he shared with both me and Paul. And it was shocking how much stuff there was, just boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes, like For any of you listening, either here in person tonight or in this show later, and you love vintage cameras, like this is the dream, to walk in somebody's house and just find wall-to-wall cameras everywhere. And it was exciting. I'm not minimizing it whatsoever. It was an amazing experience, but it was overwhelming. I mean, take something that you love to do, a fun hobby, and find yourself in a situation where you now have to deal with thousands and thousands of cameras. And while Kurt did have a lot of really cool stuff, he had a lot of stuff that was very low value. I mean, you would find boxes of Kodak Instamatics. He had 3 brand new in the original case, unopened, like Argus C44 with the flash gun. It came in like a vinyl suitcase, with batteries and a couple flash bulbs and a roll of Kodachrome or something like that. He had these things, just piles of them. And to the right person, that would be a great thing to have. But when you have thousands of things like that, it's overwhelming. And Rudy was over his head. So I told my wife, I'm like, hey, not only do I need to go out there. Well, at that point, we had already planned a week in June. I was going to go out there, but it was like late May of 2022. She's like, you need to go out there now. I'm like, yeah, I do. So I flew out there. Kurt had passed away. I missed that part out. He passed away in mid-May of 2022. I flew out there and I met up with Rudy, went to Kurt's house. And I mean, he had just barely scratched the surface of the 2 storage units. Thankfully, Kurt had told me where they were located. He told me what the gate key was, but the actual key that unlocked the garage door thingy, he didn't tell us where the keys were. And I got there and his wife is like, well, here's one of them. I don't know where the other one is. And it was the bigger of the 2. So we knew we had to deal with all this stuff in the house. We knew about the smaller unit that we were able to get into, and it was packed to floor to ceiling with banker's boxes, if you guys can picture, like a cardboard banker's box filled with cameras. And I knew the other one was bigger, and I'm like, if this thing is wall-to-wall cameras too, thankfully it wasn't, but it still had a lot in there. But at that time, we didn't know that. I'm like, I can't keep coming out here. Like, we need to strategize. Because I know I'm bouncing around here, but like Paul, we had talked about sending some stuff to you. And originally what you'd wanted us to do was take our phones and like make a video, like a FaceTime or, whatever Google's version is, and show you what there was. And we quickly were like, Paul, we can't do that. Like it would take hours, days to record a video, everything here. And it's not in order. We didn't even know if we could get in this other storage unit. And the last thing I want to do is hound his poor wife. She just lost her husband. I mean, they were together, I think, since the late 60s. These were lifelong sweethearts. And she just lost her husband, her best friend. So I don't need to be, where's the key? Where's the key? I called the storage facility and I sort of fibbed and said that I'm an estate sale manager for for a client that had a unit there and they passed away, but we can't find the key. How do we gain access to the unit? And they said that they could unlock it for us, but we needed to bring a death certificate, and he had just passed, and those things take a while to get. So it was going to be a while. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be out here by that time. So anyway, we ended up finding the key. Thankfully, it was just on his car keychain. But we, you know how storage locker keys look. They don't, nondescript little keys. And we got in there. So, like to answer your question, Paul, it took 2 trips, a grand total of 6 full days. And keep in mind, that's like when you're into this hobby or any hobby, I should have been in like complete awe, and I was. You want to pick up a neat camera that maybe you've never seen before, and your instinct is to want to like play with it and like, oh, this is so cool. Look at this. But like, that's wasted time. I mean, we had to process this stuff so fast. You would open a box of cameras and there'd be like tax paperwork in some of them. We found a box of old reel-to-reels from his band from the 70s. I had mentioned he was an expert marksman. He had rifles. Like, we're talking, I don't even know the name of these because I'm not knowledgeable in this kind of stuff, but the kinds of big long guns where like the stock is like flat because it's meant to be mounted on a platform for sharpshooting far away. And he had people coming in handling that. He had books and books and books. He loved British cars, Austins and MGs. He had service manuals for these things all over the place. I mean, the guy was just prolific in everything he did. And trying to go through it was, I don't want this to come off as like I'm complaining because I know how lucky I was to have this experience, but it was a lot of work. And, you take something that you love. It was my job for 6 straight days while I was out there. And even then I missed stuff. Paul, you would tell me that you got stuff from Kurt. And I'm like, I don't even remember seeing that, but somehow you got it.
Well, what did we wind up? We wound up with 3 U-Haul boxes.
There were a total of 4. And plus, Rudy kept some stuff, too. So some of it was sold locally.
Yeah.
Some of it went to people Kurt knew. Rudy was able to keep some cool stuff, too. For those of you who can picture, U-Haul lets you rent, they call them U-Pods. They're like these wooden crates, and you fill them up with your stuff, and then you tell them when they're done, and they send out a truck with a forklift, and they pick up these pods and put them on a flatbed semi, and they drive them to wherever you want to go. So like if you're going to move cross country, rather than rent a moving truck, you put these things in the pod, and you could take your time. Like you pay for however long you have them. And then when you're ready, you just call them up and they deliver them. So there were 4 of those. We were over the weight limit on all of them. I remember Rudy said when the lady came to pick them up from her house, the rear wheels of the forklift like lifted off the ground. She laughed. She goes, "You guys are way over the weight limit on these." 3 of them came to you. 1 of them went to you straight. 2 of them came to me first because we were running out of time and we didn't have enough time to separate everything we wanted to send to you. So we just started prioritizing. Let's just get this shit in the box. When it comes to me, I will sort it again by myself and then send to you what you should have received all along. It's just we didn't have the time. I mean, Rudy lived out there, but he had a job. He's got a daughter, he had to leave a couple times to go take her to school functions and stuff while I was in his house by myself just sorting and sorting. So it was a lot of work. It was a 6-day job of nonstop backbreaking in the California heat, cameras and stuff. So
yeah, I actually got a quick question. When you first got there and you understand that Kurt had all these incredibly rare cameras, how did you keep yourself from falling over in like a faint of awe? Because I remember the first time I ever saw a Voigtlander Superb in person was actually at a World War II museum. And it made me sort of feel like an Indiana Jones seeing this amazing. So how did you sort of process seeing all those rooms of cameras?
In addition to that, imagine finding 3 Voigtlander Superbs. We opened, there was a bright orange, it looked like a tackle box, like something you'd put fish in, or fishing, lures and stuff in. So you have no idea what's in this thing, right? It could have been manuals. We opened it up and it's filled with foam, that kind of foam where you can cut it to form whatever it is that you're protecting. And it was a military carton and a civilian carton together, like the pair. I mean, the Premier Instrument carton, which was an American Leica copy, this is a rare camera. It's worth a lot of money. And to see one is spectacular. Like, I mean, I get goosebumps every time I look at one. But there were 2 of them. They made a civilian and a military version. They were a little bit different. And you just kind of take a breath. Like you said, I was Indiana Jones opening up what was like truly what could be in this box. I don't know. Almost nothing was labeled. The few times stuff was labeled, it was usually wrong or it was misleading. It would say like Kodaks and you would open it up and it would be an extra. But then the next box that would say Kodaks would be all like Brownie and Stematics. I mean, you never really knew what you were going to open. And the only thing, William, that helped me move on from the awe was the overwhelming pressure that I have to go through all this stuff. I mean, Kurt's wife wanted the stuff gone. She wanted to empty the storage unit. She wanted to close out because storage, for those of you who know California, is incredibly expensive. I want to say the 10 by 20, they were paying $600 a month on this unit. So the desire to close this stuff out was high. She was, everybody processes death and grief differently. She was in the stage where it's just nose to the grindstone. Let's just get this stuff out of here. She wanted this stuff gone. She was very pleasant, incredibly nice lady, but you could tell there was a level of anxiety with her to get this stuff out of there. Rudy had to get back to work. I was flying across country. I had to get back home too. So the answer to that question, William, is just the need to just keep going. because the next tackle box probably had Hasselblads in it. You solve one shock and awe by exposing yourself to another shock and awe.
Hi.
Hey, Fernando.
Yes, I have a question. Can you pan your camera to see your room?
Unfortunately, I cannot, because the webcam I'm using is on a laptop screen and I have so many wires, and I've posted pictures of it online too. I have a rule as part of dealing with Kurt's collection. And then this past year, I did another one in Texas, which wasn't nearly as big, but still involved a storage unit. I don't ever want to get to the point where I have so much stuff that I have to pay monthly for a storage unit just to keep it. If you don't mind, Ira, sharing this part, but like your collection is in multiple rooms of your house. You're lucky enough that you have the space to have multiple rooms devoted to your collection. Is that a fair assessment?
Yep.
Yeah. So I have one room, right? This is like a 11 by 13 office. It's where I work in. I have my stereo behind me. Like if it's my hobby, it's got to fit in this room. So I built shelves out of 2x6s that I got from Home Depot because there weren't any pre-made camera shelves that were sufficient to hold what I wanted and were strong enough. Because, I mean, cameras are heavy, you know? I mean, you figure the average 50s SLR with a lens is between 1 to 2 pounds each, usually around 1,000 grams is how much a typical mechanical camera weighs. And that weight adds up very quickly. So I built a shelf out of lumber that was inexpensive. I could cut it to whatever size and shape that I wanted to. If I needed to expand it, I could just take pieces off and replace them with longer pieces of wood. So unfortunately, I can't pivot the camera, but I could share a picture in the notes. Just picture a big wall of unfinished pine lumber, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shelves high, filled to the brim. I mean, I'm at maximum capacity, so I don't want to let myself get to the point though where in order to keep adding, I have to pay for a storage unit.
Is that the reason why you smash the cameras after you review them? Yeah, and with the sledgehammer.
Well, or a bench vise I use sometimes too. So if I get a cool camera and I find the shelf that it goes on, I have to find the least cool camera that's on that shelf. And then that one kind of gets bumped off the island and I just destroy it. So
why don't you send it to a photography school?
I don't really destroy the cameras. That's just an ongoing joke.
I have to say that I was surprised visiting you how small that room is in reality, because even on camera here, it looks bigger than it is. And stepping in there, I was like, wait, what? Yeah.
Well, it's like when you go to like a real estate site, you know, like Zillow, you know, the real estate agents know to use like a 14 millimeter fisheye lens to make the rooms look bigger than they really are. I'm not doing that on purpose, but usually if I've posted an image of the wall, I have my camera at the wide end just to be able to fit it in the image. But it does give the illusion that the room is bigger than it really is. But yeah, I mean, the wall that the shelf is on is 10.5 to 11 feet wide. That's it.
Shift gears here for a minute. Somebody I think on the Discord server wanted to know which camera you have or have reviewed that you would send to Office 101. In other words, it was something that was so horrible that you don't ever want to see it again, and that you were sorry you saw it the first time.
Yeah, that's an easy one. That's the Konica AI board.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
And I guess I just don't understand it because I thought it was the coolest camera ever. I mean, it was a Darth Vader camera.
Yeah.
It had flashing red lights.
It looks cool. I mean, yeah, it's a great display camera. In fact, I hated that camera so much. Well, first time I reviewed it, it was one of my earlier reviews. I did that in 2016. Didn't really know much about it. And I just was like, this camera looks really cool. So I got it and it was horrible. The ergonomics are god awful. It has all these really goofy, there's a mode that the camera has that when people used to play video games on old analog cathode ray tube TVs, where it would match the shutter speed to the frame rate of your television so that if you got a high score on a video game, you could point the camera at your TV and photograph the television screen without scan lines appearing, right? Like, I'm not going to get into it, but analog televisions don't draw the whole screen simultaneously. It draws them one line at a time, just really fast. So the human eye sees it as a whole screen, but you take a picture of an old TV and you only see part of the picture. So it had a video game mode. It had a bouncing ball mode where it would take a sequence of images, multiple exposures on top of itself for the purpose, I guess, of capturing a bouncing ball. So it had other ones too. The problem is that the menu system would like prioritize those over EV compensation, or like the self timer or something. So you would have to cycle through these ridiculous modes. And the only way you knew what mode you were in was this icon system, which made no sense. The location of the shutter release was horrible. The rear up, down, left, right joystick was in a location where it was almost impossible to hold the camera with your finger on the shutter release and change modes at the same time. I hated the camera so much, and I repeatedly on both this show and in other articles referred to it as the worst camera I'd ever used. I started to develop a complex, and I thought, Mike, maybe you're a little too hard on that camera, right? It was one of my earlier reviews. Maybe I just didn't get it. Sometimes that happens, right? Like something just doesn't rub you the right way. And then you give it a shot again. And you're like, okay, maybe I could see the appeal of it now. I was like, I want to revisit that. And prices on it have gone up tremendously since that first one. I had gotten rid of it. I was like, I don't want to spend $100 untested, because that's what most of them seem to be, or they were straight from Japan. I ended up putting the call out on the Camerosity Facebook page, said, hey, is there anybody here willing to loan me theirs, because I want to revisit this camera? And it was actually Ray Nason. It's like, yeah, I'll send you mine. So I'd seen him at one of the Cincinnati shows. He goes, here you go. And I put the second camera through its paces. I shot it again. I really tried to be objective. I know sometimes, I think you guys probably have had this experience too. Sometimes we use cameras not to their strengths. You're trying to use a Hasselblad SWC as a portrait camera, and maybe it's not great for portraits or, whatever. I really tried to use that camera in the way that it was intended, maybe put myself into the shoes of like a target customer from when that thing was new. And I did get better images from the second one. I do think maybe something might have been wrong with the first one. So I did forgive the camera and say that the Konica lens that they put on it was quite good. I did get some nice images, and I forgave one or two of the poor choices on it, but overwhelmingly, I still hated it. I still thought the shutter release was in a terrible location. Just leave the camera in full auto mode. Don't waste your time in any of these other goofy modes, because you'll confuse yourself while trying to use it. I didn't like the viewfinder. For a camera sold in North America, it only measured in meters, not feet, which isn't a huge deal, but it's just a weird decision. Like, why would they do that? And I do clarify in the article, there are definitely technically worse cameras. The Konica AI Borg is better than those Chinese trash cams, the big royal view. It's more technically capable than, say, a disposable camera might be. But I rated it based off of how it was intended to be sold. The Konica AI Borg was marketed as a premium camera. I had even found an advertisement from Konica when it was new where they called it a top-of-the-line camera. So I judged it as such. Like, if I was a consumer in the early 90s when that thing was first sold, and I spent the retail price, which, obviously street price was always lower than retail, but still, the inflation-adjusted price for what that camera sold new for is the equivalent of well over $1,000 today. If I had spent over $1,000 on a camera like that, I would have definitely returned it. So for that reason, it was and still is the worst camera I've ever shot.
All right. So how about a premium camera that you didn't like?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question. Was there some bit of unobtainium that you finally got your hands on after years of looking forward to it, and you pick it up and you just go, I'm not going to review this one. It doesn't speak to me.
Well, I do have one that's in mind, but I want to have enough of a pause because it's nowhere near as bad as the AI Borg. But one that I thought I would really like, that I think is an attractive camera that I knew should perform well. Paul, you loaned me your Leica, the R8, right? That weird Porsche designed SLR. And I didn't really care for it. I thought it was way too chunky. I didn't care for the ergonomics. I mean, I got great images from it, of course, but that was maybe a camera that was premium that I was really excited to shoot. And I found myself halfway through that first roll, like dreading finishing it. Like, I just kind of want to get this over with.
You use it with or without the motor drive?
Paul, do you remember?
You had just the camera. I don't think I sent you a motor.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a lot more comfortable to hold with the motor drive.
Yeah, it just is so friggin' heavy with the motor.
Yeah.
But you're right, Ira. It is because the film advance lever is not in a good place. That's a wedge-shaped camera. Film advance lever sets a lot higher up, so it isn't really comfortable to advance the film with your thumb.
After the M5, none of them were in the right place.
See, I had no problem with the rangefinder camera, but the Mike, the one I thought you were going to mention was the one that I would send to Office 101 would be any Alpha.
The Alpha.
I think they're the worst camera in the world to try to use. Watching somebody shoot an Alpha is like watching a monkey having sex with a football.
You're really trying to get Ira going here, aren't you?
I think it's almost impossible to get a decent picture with them. You never get the horizon level.
I thought you might have mentioned the Contaflex, which I think is one of the most beautiful cameras ever designed, the Cyclops. I don't think that either of us particularly liked it that much. I mean, it's just not that fun to shoot.
Okay, now you're talking about the Contarex Bullseye?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I like that camera.
Do you really? I mean, it's sort of like chiseled out of some pot metal and...
It is a camera where you're aware of everything the camera's doing. The tolerances on it are so incredibly tight. Zeiss had put that thing, it was a premium on top of premium. I mean, those things went into outer space. You know, NASA used Contarexes for a short while. It is a good camera. It's interesting. I didn't find it that difficult to use. What I didn't care for, though, is that I just felt like I had a ticking time bomb. I did not trust it. And I'm sure if I had had one that had been properly CLA'd, I'm sure they're smoother. I'm sure they're more enjoyable when properly serviced, because mine did work okay, but no one will fix them. Or if you can find someone to fix them, you're going to spend 4 figures and wait years to get someone to CLA it. So it certainly wasn't one of my favorite cameras to use. A style of camera that I don't want to universally pan, because there are some that I like, but I generally don't care for most medium format SLRs, like the Hasselblads, the Mamiya RB7s.
The Mamiya 7.
Not the Mamiya 7. That one's
just junk.
No, that's not an SLR though. So I'm gonna.
That's right.
The rangefinders are fine.
Yeah, careful.
No. I'm on your team here, Theo. And I know that this is like, oh, just don't be a wimp, Mike, right? But like whenever I hold, and I'll just keep using the RB7 as an example, especially with the eye level prism, I feel like I'm holding a square bowling ball to my face while trying to use it. Those cameras are way better with waist level finders. Unfortunately, especially with the Mamiyas, the waist level finders, which are nothing more than a hood, sell for outrageous prices if you don't already have one. So there's been a lot of cameras like that. I recently had my Kawa 6 repaired, and I really want to try using that, but at least that I have a waist level finder for. But I haven't loved most pentaprism medium format SLRs. I just find them unwieldy. And then to speak of the Mamiya 7 or 6 or whatever, the fact that I can use a folding 6x6 medium format camera, even an Ansco SpeedX, for example, you get really good images from those. Unless you really need interchangeable lenses, most folding rangefinder or even scale focus 6x6 cameras deliver images that I think are just as good. And they're so much more portable. They're so much easier to use. So I tend to lean more towards those than some of the SLRs.
I got a question for you real quick.
Yeah, sure.
When did you first become aware of quote unquote continuation cameras or high quality knockoff / replicas? Because I'm a big fan of the early Kiev cameras. And on the Discord server recently, the Minolta AutoPress was brought up.
I mean, I don't know that there's a time I could say I became aware. I mean, you just sort of, the entire Japanese camera industry and the Soviet camera industry were created by basically copying what the Germans were doing, you know, the Feds and the Zorkis. The Kiev, actually, you really can't even call the Kiev a knockoff. It was an exact continuation of the Zeiss Icon contacts. They literally moved machinery, the assembly lines from Dresden to Ukraine and just kept making them. So when you look at the Soviet cameras, the Feds and the Zorkis are copies. They do not share any parts with the exception of the lenses and an overall similarity in design. They're more rudimentary. They're simpler. The parts are made differently. They are copies, whereas the Kievs are just a continuation. Quality control obviously dropped after a while as some of the machinery wore out. The Soviets just kept making them. As for the autopress, people say it's a copy of the Palumbo Machina, but I think you would only say that until you saw them side by side. They're in the same category, I guess I'd say, but they're really not a copy. Like, to me, a Nikon rangefinder is not a copy of the Contax rangefinder. Similar, yes, but not a copy. So I don't know that I would call the Minolta Autopress a copy of the Machina.
I just wanted to say I actually have my first Kiev is actually a Kiev 1.5. The serial number on the top says 1949.
Right, that's the first year that they were making them, or releasing them, I should say. I think they made them in 47.
I didn't even intend to buy it that way, but they just sent it to me, and it turned out to be really one.
And that's going to have size parts in it. I mean, if that thing gets CLA'd, I have some CLA'd early Kiev rangefinders, and they are just as smooth and pleasurable and easy to use as the real thing.
Here's the autopress next to the plow bell.
Yeah, so I mean, you could see they're like the viewfinder's in a wrong spot.
They're very similar.
They're similar, yes, absolutely, but I wouldn't call that a copy.
Yeah.
The struts are in a different location. The entire rangefinder is different. The lens mount is different. All of the camera's controls are in different spots. The only thing that's similar is the general shape. Do they even take the same backs? I don't think they do.
No.
Yeah. So Ira's holding up two side by side, and they're both really cool cameras in their own right. But Minolta did not copy Palumbo. They were definitely inspired by it, but that's not a copy.
I'll tell you, Ira, I had a friend that had given me the Palumbo on a long-term loan, and I absolutely fell in love with shooting that camera. That lens is special. The camera's, for being what it is, surprisingly fun to shoot. And that was one of the few cameras I had to give back that I regretted not finding a copy for myself, because that's a camera that I truly fell in love with while I had it and wish I still had access to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Anthony on that one. I've got mine, and I wasn't expecting to love it so much because they look awkward and old, but they are really fun to shoot.
Yeah.
And the quality, there is something about that lens, isn't there? It's not super sharp or anything like that, but it really brings the picture to life.
So I've got a slightly different question for you, Mike. I know that central to your reviews is you like to go in depth about the history of the companies and the situation behind the evolution of the camera that you're reviewing. Have there been cameras that you've wanted to review that you find out that these things are just unknown, that these are cameras where the manufacturers just like appeared out of nowhere, dropped this camera out of the market, and then vanished, and you actually have no way of finding out the history about what the camera is?
The Claris MS-35 was made by a camera company in Minnesota, and that's the only camera that company ever made. Vocar is another example. Well, they actually did make a folding camera, but there is in every country's history, United States, Germany, Italy, France. I have a Romanian camera, Soviet Union. There's tons of examples of what you described where it was a one and done. The 1950s in Japan spawned countless copies. Look at how many generic Rolleicord copies, 6x6 TLRs were made with goofy names: Elmo Flex, Hodor Flex, Beauty Flex. I'm surprised, Ira, that you don't collect 6x6 TLRs, because there's thousands of them you could be collecting because there's so many varieties of them.
That's exactly why I don't.
It's too big of a wormhole even for you. The question I think you want me to answer is, like, what do I do when I run into that situation? It's definitely a challenge. Like, I am much more interested in digging up something and learning something new about a lesser camera than if I was just doing another Nikon review. Early on, if you really paid attention to the type of reviews that I have, I didn't review a lot of Nikon SLRs. To this very day, in the F series, I stopped with the F3. I've never done the F4, 5, or 6, because you could get everything you need to know out there. It's already. Ken Rockwell can tell you anything you need to know about those cameras. I don't do a ton of Leicas for that same reason. The more well-known a camera is, the less likely I am to review it, unless there's something either historically significant, like a new pioneering design, or even a cool factor is definitely something that's going to move it up in the queue for me.
See, this was me trying to clue you in so you could talk about the King Regula.
The King Regula. Yeah, so like that would be an example of a company. King was a German company that there's surprisingly little out there. And I will typically take a camera like that and be like, I want to write something about it. I will tell you guys that I start a review and sometimes it takes me years to complete it. And the benefit of doing this, as long as I have in all the different websites and books that I've encountered, I find stuff sometimes for cameras that I don't even own. So I'll just use the King Regula as an example. I might have been doing a review for a Fuji camera at one time. And while I'm researching that Fuji camera, I might find an article, a Jason Schneider review in Modern Photography where he briefly mentions the King Regula. And I have a folder on my desktop on my computer with a crap load of subfolders in it. If there's something that looks especially interesting that maybe one day in the future I might want to come back to and look for, I'll make a copy of whatever it is that I found and I'll save it in there. So I have folders and folders and folders of just random information, bookmarks of websites that I've gone to. Back to Kurt, another thing Kurt loved is he loved books. In addition to all the cameras he had so many books. And I kept a lot of those for the research for it. I assumed he would have wanted me to have them because he enjoyed my site so much. And a book is a great resource, especially ones that are out of print. To the ALPA, the only ALPA book I have is entirely in German. And I don't read German, but I would use Google Translate on my phone, has a camera function where you could literally point it at text and it'll translate it for you on the fly. And it doesn't get it perfectly. You know, it struggles with Japanese and Chinese, but it usually does a good enough job where you get the gist of what they're trying to say. And that's really exciting for me is when I find something maybe that's from a book that's been out of print for 40 years and isn't available online, and then I can share that. So to circle back on like, you know, your example is usually I get to a point where I don't feel like I'm going to find anything more. If there's at least something that I think that I can share that's interesting, that's better than what Camera Wiki has or the Camerapedia website, then usually that's when I know it's time to push it out. But if I feel like there's more that I could do or that I haven't really been able to exhaust a lot of information of what could possibly be out there, I usually just keep it.
I have one question about film.
Sure.
If you had an unlimited budget, what would you use for black and white in either 120 and 35 and color?
Well, it shouldn't be a surprise, but my all-time favorite black and white film is Kodak Panatomic X. So if I had unlimited money and a time machine, I would just go back and buy, you know, a lifetime supply of Pan X. I still wouldn't use it though on every review, quite simply because, you know, sometimes like it's winter here right now. It gets dark at 4:30 in the afternoon where I'm at now. I don't have a lot of good light. So shooting, you know, an ASA 25 speed film in the middle of winter, or if I do want to shoot some indoor shots, I'm not going to use that film. A large number of cameras that I reviewed have not been serviced. They usually work. I mean, they have to work for me to use them, but I tend to favor the middle speeds. I find that anything between 60, 100 to 200 generally still works okay. If you try to test a camera and you're shooting half-second shutter speeds, or you're trying to touch the 1/1000th top shutter speed, almost certainly you're going to have problems. So I like to use those middle speeds to allow the camera the best chance to get me a good roll, and I tend to pair that up with middle speed films too. So even though I would say Panatomic X is probably my favorite all-time black and white film, the black and white film that I use the most of is T-Max 100. Partially because it's still very easy to come by. I've been able to find a whole bunch of 100-foot rolls that whenever I find one cheap, I just put it in the fridge. I like a lot of Ilford 100 films too. I'm not against Ilford. Just being in the United States, I tend to find T-Max a lot easier. Color, it's harder to find. In fact, usually like Portra is one of the few films that you could find in 100-foot rolls. I don't know that Kodak ever did things like gold 200 and 100-foot rolls. So I'm more limited really with color in terms of what I can use. So unlimited money, my favorite color film was probably Agfa, the HTC 100, which was really wonderful. It's similar to Ektar 100, but there's nothing wrong with Fuji 200, 400, the Superior. I don't do a lot of slide film simply because I develop my film myself. And not that I think slide film is hard. It's just I have a finite amount of space for developing too. And to maintain all the different chemicals, I have to find ways to simplify this as much as possible. So I do tend to stick to just C41 because I'm comfortable with it. I'm familiar with it. Do HC110 for black and white. So for color, my favorite films are really just what I can get that's affordable and reasonably easy to use.
Sorry, were you saying that you're bulk loading Portra? Because I've never found anything other than cinema film that comes in rolls like that.
Well, I'm not currently doing that, but I've seen it before. They did make 35 millimeter Portra in bulk rolls. But what I was trying to say was, other than that, you can't find it.
Yeah.
It's not easy to find. You can do the motion picture film, like Vision 3.
Sure, yeah.
Anthony does magic. I'm assuming he does some kind of alligator Cajun voodoo whenever he shoots Kodak Vision 350D, because the images you get, Anthony, from that film are fantastic. When we do the Anthony episode, I'll have to ask you more questions about that. But yeah, I do like the cinema films quite a bit. When I can get some of that, I will, but that's even harder to find. Far and above, my bulk film is almost always black and white.
Yeah, I was at a local swap meet down in Orlando at the Kiwi Camera, and there was some old guy that was just like selling the remnants of his darkroom, and he had 3 large 200-foot roll bulk loaders that looked interesting to me. I thought I'll just pick those up. They were full of 100-foot rolls of different Velvia speeds. So I had 300 feet of bulk loaded Velvia, like 50, and I forget what the other speeds were, 400? Paul, do you remember what other speeds Velvia came in?
50 and 100 in Velvia.
And one was Provia. So 2 Velvia and 1 Provia.
Were they marked?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. So you didn't have to guess about what was in it?
No. They were marked on the containers. And I was like, these feel full. And he's like, I probably just never got around to shooting them. I think I paid $25 for all 3 of them. But yeah, there was a time, 25 years ago, when you could get good color film in 100-foot rolls that is for professional use, but it's out there. You just don't see it on the market very often.
Well, and then keep in mind too, color just doesn't last. It doesn't survive as well.
It doesn't. In
addition to all the other reasons I like Panatomic X, I often refer to it as time travel film. Kodak TechPan XX is in that same realm too. Agfa, their 25 speed film is the same way. The slower films, I have bulk rolls of Kodak Panatomic X warm. I don't refrigerate it because they probably haven't been refrigerated for the past 50 years. So why start now? That expired in the 70s and it still shoots fine box speed. Even if there was a large supply of Kodak Gold or whatever, Kodacolor from the 70s and 80s, there's a much higher probability it wouldn't even be usable.
I got a quick question for you. Would you mind telling us a story about the time you found a camera accessory that led you to a new camera you've never heard about before? Because just recently I found out my photometer rangefinder was a unique rangefinder just for the Voss Diex.
Well, I could do 2. One of my most recent reviews was the Alpa SI2000. I had the lens before I had the body. I had found this thread mount Alpa lens. It was a 24 millimeter that I was like, why do I have a screw mount Alpa lens when I know that they're, typically bayonet lenses? And I looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, that was the Chinon copies, the SI2000. And then later they did the 3000, which had the Pentax K mount. So that's an example where I had to seek out a body when I already had the lens. But since you asked about an accessory, in Kurt's collection, I forget what it's called, but the Praktica FX2 had this optional eye-level prism that you could slide inside the waist-level finder. So the Praktica FX2 is a fixed waist-level camera only. This camera did not come with a pentaprism, but they sold this accessory that you can slide into the waist-level finder, and it kind of turns the waist-level finder into a pentaprism eye-level finder. So I had the viewfinder, but I didn't have the camera that it went to. And I think, Paul, you sent this to me.
Yeah. Is that Mark Zeiss icon, that finder?
No, KW.
Okay. I have about 6 or 8 of them you sent me that are all Zeiss icons.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't have any that are marked KWs.
So I had the finder, you had the body, and this lens is from a different camera too. So you sent me the body, I paired it up with a lens that I had, and I paired it up with this finder just because it went together. So William, I could probably do that with countless other. I have accessory rangefinders. In fact, I just mentioned the Bullseye Jubilee came with a flash unit that mounted to the side. I had the flash unit before the camera. I could continue jumping down a wormhole of buying cameras just to pair them up with accessories that I have, but I try not to do that.
One of the hardest things to research that I've ever found is something you just did. You just did this to me, Mike. Heinz kill fit.
Yeah.
Heinz kill fit. They are almost impossible to find any information on what's what. You sent me a box of, I think it was 8 or 9 pounds of adapters. Mm-hmm. And even though the adapters have code names on them, code letters, you can't find what it is.
No.
There's nothing online that tells you what they are.
Right.
Killfit made accessories. I mean, they made a couple lenses. Most famous, of course, is the 400 millimeter, but they also made the macro Kelars in 40 and 90 millimeter, and 150 millimeter short mount lenses that were made to be used on Kelar flexes or Kelar scopes. I mean, it's just impossible to find anything on them.
Well, when we did the Exacta episode, we spent some time talking about the rear window camera, which was the 400 millimeter. And I did look. That did inspire me to maybe get one of my own. The problem with finding that lens, in addition to it just have been a low production lens, people are aware that it was used in that movie, so it's become a bit collectible. But even harder than that is that lens was never made with a specific lens mount in mind.
Exactly. And there's nothing online that tells you what the adapter is.
Right.
I have exact amounts, but I don't have an exact amount that fits that lens.
Right. So you needed, when that lens was new, KillFit would have had a catalog, or your dealer would have told you, all right, here's the lens. Which camera do you want to use this on? And then he would sell you the adapter to make it work with it. So you need to find those with the correct Exacta adapter already on it in order to mount it to an Exacta. So you could find that lens maybe with a different mount. If you wanted to recreate the rear window lens, you could still use the lens. You would have to remove the adapter you have, find the correct one, which, as you pointed out, is incredibly difficult to do, and then remount it to your camera, which you could do. Is essentially a predecessor of the Tamron, the Adaptol system, right?
Yeah.
They were the first company to do that.
Well, Novaflex also did the same thing.
Okay.
But Novaflex, they had their codes. They published the information. It was a tinker toy system, but at least you could find the stuff.
Okay.
I mean, you could identify it. With Kelar, you couldn't. But you're right, Mike. I mean, it's an adaptable mount. And to make it even goofier, the little 40 millimeter lens that you and I like so much, they made those available in like 4 or 5 different mounts.
Yeah.
And then supposedly they made them without a mount that you could add a mount to, but nobody ever seems to know where to find those mounts.
Right. And Paul, he already had one, but his was in rough shape. And I came across a box of 4 of these, the Macro Kelar, the 40 millimeters, the 2.8. And I was like, oh my God, Paul, I found one for you. It's brand new. I mean, it looked mint, still in the cardboard box.
M42 mount.
No, it was M44.
I know, but we thought they were M42.
Right. I looked at it, and to the naked eye, you can't tell to the naked eye the difference between 42 millimeter and 44 millimeter. Who would have thought? So I sent it to Paul, super excited for him, because I knew he really liked that lens. I'm like, this one's much nicer than the one that you already have. And then he got it. He's like, well, the damn thing doesn't fit. And then we started digging into it and realized that it wasn't the right one. So,
and then we found out that Killfit never made one in M44 mount.
Yeah, it was an adapter.
So where did the 4 that I have, how did that come to be?
They're one of a kind. If you had a DeLorean, you could probably go back to a specific moment in time where that was the rarest lens in the world and you could have sold it for millions of dollars, but not anymore.
I was trying to figure out what this one is. It's a screw mount. That's all I know. But this is the Killfit, the 400.
That's it. What you have there is the lens without the mount.
Yeah, it has a screw mount on it, but...
Mark, does the screw mount, does it have 3 set screws that hold it in place?
No.
I can't see it good enough, but what I think that is, Paul, I think that's the native. You're supposed to screw the adapter onto that.
Okay.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's like taking a Tamron Adaptol lens and taking the Adaptol part off, and what's left behind is what Mark has.
Okay.
So you have like a naked kind of lens. You need to find the correct adapter, which you'll never find it. And if you do, it's just going to be dumb luck.
I'm pretty sure I mounted this on something. I got to look back and see.
It's hard to tell through Zoom, but that's really what you're describing, Paul and Mark, is the challenge with these lenses, is even if you find the right lens, it still doesn't guarantee it's going to mount to the camera you want it to, because you need a very specific, how Leica had all the crazy code names, so did Killfit. We don't have the book. Pacific Rim has not found the catalog with a list of every piece and what you need.
I got a question for you. About a year ago, I saw a YouTube video about a guy that said he had found a telephoto Killfit lens that was marked NASA. Is there any validity to that?
That's the one I have. Yeah, that's the one. I have that lens. It's a 150 3.5 short mount that was on a Keelar scope. It is marked NASA. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it's marked NASA. I think that I had an adapter or something that was also marked NASA.
Well, I would imagine it's an inventory marking.
Yeah, it wasn't a property ID tag because the lens isn't big enough for them to be able to put something like that on it.
Yeah.
And they fit on the Keelar scope or Keelar Flex because they're M39 mount.
Sure. Well, figure they had to take pictures of stuff too. Any organization needs to keep track of their belongings. So I suspect you could find a lot of stuff from that era with things like NASA. People find crime scene cameras that usually have like a police department inventory sticker on them, some kind of municipality, labs, school districts. I don't want to say they're common, but it wasn't unusual to find something from that era with some kind of ownership engraving on it.
Are there any cameras that maybe you don't have, but you would like to find to shoot?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, I still have a wish list of stuff that I'd like to have, but it's much easier to not have those when there's so many other things. On the rare occasion that I really get a bug up my butt, like I really need to have X camera, I can easily dissuade myself from searching for it by just grabbing something else off the shelf. So I think it was William Ponder, you asked me about Kurt's collection. How did I get over finding a camera? If I get hyper focused on something that I don't have, it's easy to distract myself by just looking at something else. So Will Pinkham, yes, there are certainly things I'd love to add, but my queue is so freaking huge that all I need to do is just pick something else, and I'm usually over it.
Well, I was looking for a name. You have so much. I was like, there's got to be one thing.
Let me get back to you on that one.
I was thinking about that too, because there are so few that are ultra rare that are also ultra cool. There's a lot of rare cameras that just aren't cool. They're rare because they didn't make many of them because they were dogs and they didn't sell. So they only made 12 of them. But you had that Alfred Witness was the.
Yeah. And that was a loaner.
Yeah.
In fact, I reviewed that camera twice. I was so enamored with it when I saw Ira's in his home. I photographed it in his home. So I never really got to spend more than 5-10 minutes with it. I never got to shoot it. And then I had the opportunity where a reader sent me his father's, who had passed away, with the intent of me then passing it on to Dan Tamarkin to be sold. But he said, I don't mind if you play with it for a little while. So I did get a chance to shoot an Ilford Witness. I don't have one in my collection. I would love one. I would love one of those. Ira, you had a camera called an Ukaflex, which I think is really cool. I'd love to have. The Leotax G, I think, is gorgeous. I'd love to have one of those. Sometimes I've written about a camera and I've already done a review for it, but it was a loaner. So then sometimes retroactively, I seek out one. We were recently talking about the Velta Superfecta. The one that I did the review for that's on my website was a loaner, which I later sent back to the owner. But since then, I've acquired one of my own. So the one that's in my collection is not the same one that I did the review for, but I liked it enough that I later wanted to come back and get it. And it takes years. Please, anybody listening to this, I don't want you to think that I have some magic tree in the backyard that I just go shake every time I want a cool camera. These wish lists that I have take me years to find stuff.
Did you keep a Pentaflex?
The Pentaflex, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you kept one. I got two, you got one.
I kept one.
Did you get the 24 by 36 or the?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
And I have a review of that coming up, like imminently.
Yeah, that's one of the rarest of the rare too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an incredibly rare camera.
That came from Texas.
Right.
Mike, can I ask you what your favorite cameras are? I mean, if you had to pick, I don't know, a handful of cameras, what would you be shooting?
How many more episodes do we have? Well, my root is with Nikons. I mean, I am far from a Nikon fanboy, but I really am partial to the older Nikon SLRs. I think the Nikkormat is one of the greatest cameras ever made, not because of how high tech it was, but because of how amazing it is to use. Most of them can be found today in still working condition. They're in incredible value. Anybody who comes up to me and says, Mike, I want to get into an old film camera, where should I start? I'm probably going to point you to a Nikkormat. I mentioned the EL2 was one of my first cameras, and that's like a Nikkormat but with an electronic shutter. I'm well known as being a huge fan of the Argus C3. Certainly, there's way better cameras I have, but I do really like that camera. The ergonomics on it are terrible, but in a glorious way. You get amazing images from it. In fact, I remember Anthony years ago had said, I've never even seen an Argus C3 in person, and I sent you one of mine. And you shot it, and remember, you got results from it. You were like, I get it now. Like, this is a really cool camera.
It is. And again, it's a camera that I would never have gone out of my way to try to find.
Yeah.
But it was based on your recommendation because, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you is, why is the Argus brick still one of the best cameras that you can own?
I wouldn't say best. That's not, but it endears itself to me. It's unique. It's got a great story. From the Midwest. Ann Arbor, Michigan's not too far from where I live. So there is kind of a sense of locality that kind of adds to the appeal to me, that there's so many different varieties. There's like the Golden Shield. There's the Matchmatic. I was able to add, in fact, not too long ago, the very, very first Argus C, which had the fast slow switch on it. The very first model, there was actually a switch where you would toggle between fast and slow speeds. And the mechanism was very difficult to make. And they quickly abandoned it after only, I think, maybe the first 1,000 cameras, let's just say. And all later ones, they just put all the speeds on the same dial. But that very first one, and I have one of those. I really love the Olympus Pen F, the SLRs. I think those are some of the most beautiful cameras ever made. They're technologically cool with that rotary shutter, the sideways prism. The lenses are incredible on them. And while I won't suggest that a Pen F is a cheap camera to find, compare that to a Leica SLR and they're reasonably affordable. I do like the screw mount Leicas. I mean, people sometimes like to rip on them because they're so popular. Oh, there's so many better cameras, and you're not wrong. But I mean, I love the Leica screw mounts. I have Johnny Sisson was on episode 100, and he talked about how much he loves his black enamel Leica 3, and I have one just like that, and I agree with him. It's a wonderful camera to hold. I love the Canon P. I love the Kievs. I love the Medalist. I know you love that one. I maybe don't share Theo's love for the Mamiya 7, but the Mamiya 6 is a great camera. It would be impossible for me to pick what my favorite camera was, but if I didn't have a review site and all I did was pick up my cameras that I just enjoy shooting, I suspect I would choose Nikon SLRs at a slightly higher frequency than any other brand.
Mike, we've heard a lot about your camera collecting, your blog, everything to do camera-wise with you. Let's find out a little bit more about the man himself. What other things are you in danger of collecting? Because I know of something that lights up the room that you're possibly quite interested in as well. So
to answer that question, a little more insight, you had pointed out earlier, or I think Anthony did, that I'm not much of a photographer. If you happen to read one of my reviews and you see a really nice picture and it's something I took, that's probably a happy accident. I'm not a great photographer. I like the history. I like the gadget. I love the stories behind these things much more. So a combination of like technology and history is hugely appealing to me. So the thing you're referring to, I'll get to in a moment. But another hobby of mine is I love analog audio. I have a budding vinyl collection. I listen to a lot of underground metal bands, so I buy a lot of obscure heavy metal albums on vinyl. I have a Pioneer turntable from the very early 80s. I have a Pioneer SX750 receiver, which is the exact same model my dad had when I was a kid growing up. For those who are familiar, this series of Pioneer receivers has like a brushed metal front with like a fake wood veneer cabinet. When you turn it on, the whole display glows like a yellowish orange. It's just beautiful. It sounds great. So, for music, I listen to that. But one day, and I don't know how this happened, it's another one of those one night on eBay. Well, it wasn't on eBay, but there's a website of this fire station in California that has something called the Centennial light bulb. What it is, it's an old carbon filament light bulb that's been in continuous use in this fire station since I think like 1902. The only time the bulb has ever been turned off was like in a power outage and like one time when they had to like move the fire station or something like that. But this one light bulb has been on for 120 years. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, I don't know why I'm drawn to this, but I started going down this wormhole of carbon filament light bulbs. And one night on eBay, I found a couple of them. So I bought these carbon loop old antique light bulbs. The Edison style LED bulbs are really popular, but these are what the Edison style bulbs are looking for. And I learned that there was a competing standard to the screw-in bulb, which was more of a bayonet mount in light bulbs. Very early light bulb incandescent bulbs had a bayonet mount, which I don't have that. But I started feeling myself getting as excited for light bulbs as I do vintage cameras. And that's when I knew I had to put the brakes on. But not until after I got a couple of these carbon loop bulbs. And I have one behind me. And one of the things that I read that has allowed these bulbs to run as long as they have is by running them at a lower voltage. You don't want to run pure 120 volts AC through them. So I have it connected to a switch that has a potentiometer, which allows me to lower the voltage to it. So it's running at about half volts. I haven't measured it or anything. When I turn off all the lights in here, the ceiling lights, when I turn off the computer and I just sit in this room, it has the exact same feel as like a fireplace. And there's just that warmth to me. It soothes my soul, so to speak. Yeah, I've had to put the brakes on it because I don't want to become a vintage light bulb collector. But I really like history. I like technology. If I had unlimited space and unlimited money, I'd probably get into like vintage computers. I grew up with the Commodore 64. I love the old Texas Instruments computers, the early game consoles. I would love to get an Altair, which was an old like toggle switch computer. I think that early form of technology is just so cool.
And then, of course, you got the Pixie clock.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. I have a Nixie tube clock. The Soviet Union made these things called Nixie tubes, where it's a cathode, and they have the number 0 through 9. Each number is a different cathode, and every one of these are wired independently. So you could send voltage through each one of them one at a time. So if you want to see a 0, only the 0 cathode will glow. If you want a 7, it'll only do that one. And similar to Soviet-era cameras, the factories that made these things just made them in massive, massive quantities, far beyond what anybody needed. And I believe, I could be wrong, I need to find a Nixie tube collector's website to really research, but I believe they continued making these things through the 90s. And you could find them in like Ukraine and Lithuania and Russia for super cheap. And people have started taking them and making clocks out of them. So they put them in a little box. Some of them are made out of wood. Mine's made out of wood. Some of them are just plastic. They use something called an Arduino, which is like a programmable little computer board, and they turn them into clocks. So I have a Nixie tube clock, I have a Centennial light bulb, and my vinyl record player all sitting behind me right now.
Mark Faulkner was just holding up a Nixie clock.
Does Mark have one too?
Yeah.
Nice.
I might have to have one of those. I think those are just cool.
They're really neat. Be careful, though, because a lot of the kits on eBay are kits.
Oh.
They're not assembled. So pay attention. This isn't to just paw anybody. Go look on eBay. Most of the Ukrainian sellers, like with cameras, are very trustworthy. They do a great job. But pay attention to what you're buying because some of them are kits. that aren't assembled. Some of them don't come with the tubes. You want one that's completely assembled and ready to go, unless you're into programming Linux, into hobbyist computers.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this. For a listener who wants to start a collection, what would you start with? What would be a camera that you could find variations on that are reasonably priced and are fun to look at or fun to shoot with?
I go back to the Arguses. I know they're harder to find outside the United States, but there are a ton of them made. They're inexpensive. They're fun to shoot. There's a bunch of different varieties. Beyond that, I mean, it's really easy to get into Soviet cameras too. The Feds and the Zorkis are really terrific cameras. While sample variation does cause some of them to be in lower condition than others, most people who can service a Leica can service one of them because they're close enough, and they work really well. If you were an SLR shooter and had never shot a rangefinder and wanted to dip your toes in it, but didn't want to pay Leica or Contax prices, a Fed 2 is a fantastic first choice. It's cheap. The Industar, or if you're lucky, the Jupiter 8 lenses, which are usually found on them, are optically excellent. The Soviet Union was, not the best at a lot of things, but one thing they did incredibly well was make triplets. Any Soviet triplet is going to give you image quality rivaling that of the best Japanese or the best German lenses, bar none. Outside of that, I think the Kodak Retinas are great cameras to collect too. They're a lot of fun to shoot, very high quality. They're quirky. A little bit more expensive than probably a Fed might be today, but Retina was one of my earliest cameras too, and I've always been really fond of those as well. The best tip, if you are interested in building a collection, is you've already done it. You're already listening to the world's first and only open source film and digital photography podcast. So listen to this show, visit Paul's eBay store, and go on Discord or Facebook and just see what everybody's talking about. There's a lot of cool stuff out there.
And don't necessarily believe everything we say.
It's true. It's true. Circling back to something I said before, too, I'm going to pat all you guys on the back, both the people here live and listening from home. This is a great community. Yeah, there's some people that have strong opinions in certain things, but overwhelmingly, I have found the level of support and kindness from film and camera collectors, the generosity of people like Ira and Paul and Kurt, Bob Rodoloni. I mean, Bob welcomed me into his house and just, what do you want to know? I'll tell you anything you want to know. He's not here tonight, but he's been on this show so many times. Johnny Sisson is an incredible person to meet in person. For those of you who've met Vlad Kern, one of the warmest, kindest people I've ever met. So many people in this hobby are great and willing to help other people out and lend a hand. And I think that this is a really great hobby because of all those people.
Now, Mike, your kids, are they getting interested in collecting cameras at all?
No. No. There have been moments in time where my son has been interested in maybe a digital camera. And, we've had a couple times where we've gone out and shot together, but you could tell it's not something he's gotten himself into. My daughter likes to come in my room and sometimes I'll let her handle the camera. So while she doesn't really want to use it, she does notice the feel of the metal, the cold metal, the weight. She understands that what dad likes is 100-year-old. She has no concept of how long 100 years actually is. But she knows that it's old, and she knows that not every kid's dad has a room like I do. So I don't think they necessarily roll their eyes at it as much as maybe another hobby might be. But unfortunately, there is no second generation of MikeEckman.com. Not yet, but there's still time. AJ, you haven't spoken. I want to get an AJ question.
An AJ question. Oh my God.
Something's got to be eating at you.
Most of the questions have all been asked. I'm still trying to follow you on eBay with all the models that you're rattling off.
Oh, yeah.
So we're up to the point of talking about the sex scandals then, are we? We've got to ask the hard questions.
Mike, what do you like to eat?
I like to eat? Well, I'm a bit portly for those of you who've met me in person, so a lot of things. I mean, anything. I'm a food guy. I like to try everything from sushi to burgers to tacos, lasagna. Good pizza is always welcome in my book. I'll eat almost anything.
Do you cook?
Yeah, I do actually. Between my wife and I, I'm the one that's more likely to cook, create dishes. My kids really like beef stroganoff, so I have a beef stroganoff recipe that I make regularly. When you have small kids, you can't be too experimental, but I like to make a lot of the dishes around the house. When it's warm out, we'll grill outside on the grill. I recently went back to gas. I was a charcoal guy for many years. And while I still do like a charcoal grill, as I've gotten older, my patience just thins. And the convenience of a gas grill is just a lot easier than having to wait for the charcoals to heat up.
And then coffee beans, roasting coffee beans.
Yeah, roasting coffee beans. Anthony inspired me with his coffee shop, Volta. I just decided, hey, I want to learn how to roast coffee beans. So I bought a whole bunch of Nicaraguan unroasted beans online, and I thought I would fill my house with the aroma of beautiful coffee, and my wife would come home and jump up and down at the smell of these ground beans that I was roasting. Little did I know that when you roast coffee beans, it smells horrible. It smokes up the house really bad, and my hood over my stove doesn't vent out. It just recirculates back into the room. So I slept on the couch that night, but then I learned I could roast my coffee beans on the grill outside. So when I want to get into roasting beans, I do that outside.
Any plans of coming to Europe?
I would love to travel. At my stage in life with two small kids, it's difficult to do. Maybe when they get a little bit older, I'd love to travel. I mean, I've been to London. I actually took a trip to India about 15 years ago, which was an amazing experience. I'd love to get to Germany. My last name, Eckman, is German. My ancestors are from Germany. I would love to be able to see a lot of things out there. There's so many places I'd love to visit, but it's not the right time of my life to get to Europe right now.
Well, you're always invited to come and organize a tour, the Wetzlar and Zeiss.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to visit Theo. I mean, the idea of going to Australia is incredibly fascinating to me. That would be amazing.
Well, I think we've prodded and poked Mike consistently through this.
Yeah, some good questions. I didn't know how long we would be able to keep going, so there's some good stuff.
I'd like to sort of say that, Mike, we really appreciate everything you've done for the community, especially in terms of the website, kicking off this podcast. I think we're all much richer for having been in contact with you and having you in our sphere. It really makes a big difference having someone show their passion as much as you do, which then spurs on our own passion as well. So I think I can speak for everybody when I say, we really appreciate everything you do.
And I appreciate you guys too. I mean, I couldn't do this without you. This would be a very boring podcast if it was just me. I've said already, I couldn't have gotten nearly as far as I did on the website without the support of so many people. So it's my way of giving back. Part of me feels like when I do write a review, I'm doing it for future generations. I'm not going to say that I think MikeEckman.com is going to live on in internet archives for centuries and centuries, but maybe whatever version of the Wayback Machine survives may one day, they may find some of my stuff too. So hopefully it's helpful to people as people who've been helpful to me. And, one similarity between my site and this show is that both of them were started not necessarily by accident, but without any planning. I just one day bought a camera on eBay and decided to write about it, and it turned into what it did. And I'm not going to keep repeating it, but you guys all know the origin of this show too. Johnny and I just turned on Zoom one night and sent out some invites, and here we are 101 episodes later.
I think there's a huge wealth of information out there that is hidden away, and it's just in people's heads, and putting it out in a way that other people can access, it is a lot of work. And the fact that you've done so much of that we can, say, have you Eckman'd that camera? And that when you're just looking for info on a camera, you do a Google search, and your website is one of the first that comes up on so many, or in some cases the only. And if it's not, then Theo's Photo Thinking is the one that comes up with information on that camera. All of this information for so many people is just inaccessible. So the effort that you go to share it, whereas so many others just keep it to themselves, not necessarily to hoard that information, but because they really just don't want to put the time and energy into sharing it. I think that what really is a unique thing and that we can all be inspired by is that the effort you take to share what you know and what you're passionate about, it will reach so many more people than you could ever imagine. In the way that your website has grown into this podcast and connected to so many other people, and the Discord chats that are going on, that all of this has kind of rallied around you just wanting to share some of the things that you liked about cameras. And it's definitely paid off in a huge way for a lot of people.
I think we're on the precipice of a huge loss of knowledge and experience. I mean, I mentioned at the top of the show, Eric Cass-Lewis passed away. We've lost Peter Decker. We've lost Larry Gubas. We've lost so many people who had a ton of knowledge. Bob Rotoloni is thankfully alive and well, but he's not a spring chicken. And as each time somebody moves on, there's a tremendous amount of knowledge that goes with them. We talked in previous episodes, people aren't writing camera books like they used to. The odds of another Nikon rangefinder book by Bob or Zeiss Historica book, 600 pages ever being written again is slim to none. I can even remember earlier episodes of the show where we talked about repairing cameras. And I remember one of them, I think it was when we had Jess Ibarra on, I said that pretty much any camera that's ever been made is still repairable. This was a couple years ago. There's somebody that can repair almost anything. And here we are in 2025, and I don't think that's true anymore. I think in the time that this show has existed, we've already started to see the last person who can repair X camera has stopped or passed away or just doesn't do it anymore. The Pentax LX has been a big topic of discussion on Discord and how difficult those are to repair. The Contorex we brought up earlier, the Zeiss Icon Contaflex TLRs. We're at this point where the amount of knowledge that exists is dwindling. So for people like Theo, Hamish, Alyssa Chirello, Jim Gray, I mean, there's a huge list. I don't want to rattle them all off. But for the people who have blogs and are sharing that information, keep doing it. Come on the show. If there's something we get wrong, tell us, fix us. I don't get everything right. I do make mistakes, and I need you guys to help me and make it right and preserve this knowledge so people can continue to enjoy it.
And we find him every time he gets something wrong.
I fired my editor so many times.
Like, would you mind if I copy your podcast in Spanish?
Sure. You could do whatever you want, man. Translate it however.
No. Like a new podcast.
Oh, okay. So like a spinoff. All right.
Yes.
Go for it. If you want to make a Spanish Camerosity, that'd be totally fine with me.
Okay. Camerosita.
You know, this isn't what you said, but something I discovered recently is this show automatically gets pushed to Spotify. I don't do that. We pay a yearly fee to Podbean, who is the host that these episodes are hosted on. And Podbean distributes it to all these other platforms. So you could iTunes, Google, whatever. But when Spotify does it, they must use AI because they create chapters. And it'll be like Mike talks about the Argus C3. You could skip to that section. And I don't know how the hell they're doing it, but it's impressive, actually. So I'm not a huge fan of AI. I know it's a super sensitive subject for a lot of people, but in this one very specific use, I was pretty impressed with going on Spotify, listening to Camerosity podcast episodes. You can actually skip ahead and it'll tell you what we're talking about at that time. So I thought that was kind of cool because people have asked if we have a text version of this show, and we just don't. I know there are some that'll do like voice to text, but it's way off. It doesn't do a good job of it. And unfortunately, I have no plans on making a text transcription of the show.
I love the idea of Spanish language spin-off, though. That's a fantastic idea.
Thank you very much.
I'd love to find out if there's a way to get more of a presence in the show in Japan. I know culturally it can be difficult for English things to cross over to Japan, but for how much history we've talked about and all the different, we've had people from South Africa, most countries in the European Union, South America, obviously North America, Australia, New Zealand. But we've had, I don't think anybody ever from Japan has ever called in. And I just feel like there's people there that would have an interest in something like this or do their own version. Maybe they already do, and we just don't know about it. I don't know.
Well, I'm traveling there in February, so maybe I can actually call in for a few minutes.
Get a whole bunch of T-shirts and bring them with and start handing them out.
I'll be there at the end of this month. So, yeah. I mean, spread the word.
That's right. Yeah, Mark's going there.
So what's next, Mike? When's the next episode?
So we already talked about having another episode. We're going to do episode 102. Will be on Tuesday, December 23rd. It's going to be an unofficial Christmas holiday episode. We will definitely have some eggnog, maybe some rum. Who knows what we'll cover then? We don't have a very specific topic, but we thought we would have a little bit of fun with like a holiday themed episode to follow up this one. But we will be back in January with some more specific topic shows. We have a couple ideas on things that we want to cover. I think we've hit all the major brands already, so I don't want to necessarily rehash, let's do another Pentax episode. But we do have some ideas on things that we'll do. But for sure, today's Monday the 8th. As usual, it'll take a little while to get this episode edited and out, but our next recording will be 15 days from today on Tuesday, December 23rd at the usual time. And we'll have links out for people to join us a couple days before that.
Looking forward to the next episode.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming out. As always, the topics and discussions on the Camerosity podcast are influenced by you guys. This show is absolutely nothing without its listeners. So if there's ever a topic or a question you want to ask or hear us talk about, don't email me. Don't post about it on Facebook. I mean, you can if you want, but the best way to hear your topics is just come on the show and ask us. And we're always happy, no matter how much you've been collecting, whether you have 1,000 cameras or one camera. We like talking to everybody. So thank you guys for coming, and everybody have a great night. We'll see you next time.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Adios.
Take care.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, everybody.
So who's still hungover from the 100th celebrations?
You know that Malort is kicking my ass.
I still had a keg in the kegerator of Oktoberfest from the fall, so I finally just finished that thing off, and I need to get another one.